I may have said this before, but it's too fitting not to throw into the mix this morning. I want to start off by saying that I probably would not be standing here this morning if it were not for a certain high school or a certain teacher I had when I was in high school. Many years ago when I was a junior in high school. That has been a while ago. And it is kind of funny to think about it. That's the stage that Hannah's at right now. That's just kind of weird. But when I was Hannah's age, okay, but I was a kid in high school that had no idea what he was going to do. I really didn't have any idea or didn't really think there was much I could do. And I really think I was probably in denial of this reality that was looming over me. And I would hear some kids talk about going to college or saying they're going to do this or do that. And my response would be like, well, I have no idea what I'm going to do. But there was this teacher that overheard that I really didn't have any plans for after high school. And she felt that I had at least some potential at least because she took a hold of me. And she got me to thinking about what I could possibly do after high school. She got me to doing some projects for her. And she encouraged me to think about going to college. And no one had ever done that for me before, at least not to that degree. And no one had ever told me that I could go to college, and so that really wasn't an option that I even considered. And that's not the route for everybody, but for me, that was something that opened up my horizons, made me think about the future in some ways that I never had before. And really what she did, more than anything, was that she believed in me. She believed that I could do some things. She believed and encouraged me to do my she believed that I could do my very best, and she encouraged me to do so. And so the reason why, part of the reason why I wouldn't be here today is because to have a bachelor's, you have to have a bachelor's degree to get into seminary. And so that really helped me when I started the process of becoming a pastor. And I know guys that went into the ministry that had no post-secondary education. And so when they started ministry and serving churches, they had to start working on the bachelor's degree at that point and then go to seminary. And that took years and years and years. I am sure glad that I did not have to take that kind of a route. But this teacher, who I know to be a Christian, I believe really reflected part of the character of God and what she did for me. You see, when God looks at each one of us, God sees the qualities that you have. God sees the gifts and abilities that you have. God sees what He's made you really to be. He sees all your potential. And really, as we think about recognizing graduates today and their accomplishments and what they're going to be doing in life, it's important for us to remember to give God thanks and praise, because really it is God that has gifted us. It is God that has enabled us to do the things that we are able to do. And it makes me think of what the Scripture says in Genesis chapter 1. And in Genesis chapter 1 it says, God created humankind in His image. In the image of God He created them and made them male and female He created them. Now, I've preached this passage before, but so I won't preach the whole scripture or the whole sermon on this. But being created in the image of God, to me, means that we have been given the attributes of God. And I'll give you a few examples of that. God is awfully creative. God is intelligent. God is sovereign. We see that in the creation account. And God is sovereign because no one tells God what to do. When you take a look at us, I think it's safe to say that we're pretty smart and we're pretty creative. Take a look around the world and you can see just how smart and how creative we are. And I think what's really amazing is that you can take in a cell phone or one of those smartphones, you can hold the entire vast knowledge that humans have gained. You can have all that stored on there or access that through the internet. And I think that says a lot about who we are and about our creativity. That's really an amazing statement or testament to what God has endowed us with. But I also believe that God calls us to reflect His character as well. God calls us to reflect His righteousness and His wisdom. And I believe that we are our happiest and we are our fullest when we do that. And unfortunately, God, well, it is a fortunate thing, but, God gave us sovereignty as well. God gave us a free will. And in that sovereignty and in that free will, we choose oftentimes to do our own things. We make choices based on what we think is best, based on what we think is right, based on our own desires, and unfortunately, we make a mess oftentimes doing that. I said a moment ago, take a look around the world and you can see how smart we are. You take a look around the world, you can also see how foolish we are and see what a mess that we make of things. And so that, I think, is really where teachers and role models of all kind need to step in and help out. And as we're talking about teachers this morning and school employees, let's not forget about Sunday school teachers. Teachers that take kids and tell them about what is right and wrong. Teachers who take people, little kids, and teach them about the truth of God. You see, somebody has to see the potential in that young person. Somebody has to see that potential even in an adult. Somebody has to believe in that young person. I think one of the problems that our young people face is that there aren't enough people who believe in them. Or maybe there's no one that believes in them. For kids to excel, for kids to thrive, there's got to be someone who really believes in them and believes that they can do good things, that there are good things within them. If there is no one that believes in the kid, then how are they going to believe in themselves? Unless they're really, really strong. And most people aren't that strong. But if there's someone that believes in them and encourages them to do their best, well, then they're going to take their best shot at life. And unfortunately, a lot of kids don't, because they don't have that one who believes in them. And again, teachers, I think, are a good example of someone that can do that. But someone has to bring out that character that God has put into them. And as we're talking about teachers too, let's not forget again about Sunday school teachers. I mentioned a high school teacher. I want to mention a Sunday school teacher. I had a really great Sunday school teacher through high school, or through junior high really, and high school. She was incredibly patient with all of us kids. I know that some of us, we really gave her a pretty hard time sometimes, but she was very patient with us. She was dedicated, and through her ministry, I know that she made a big impact for God in my life. In fact, if it weren't for her, I probably wouldn't be standing here either. I mean, she made a big impact on me. Now, I did end up marrying her daughter, so I mean, I guess maybe I'm kind of biased in my opinion, but she really did make a big impact in my life. And teachers use a lot of skill, and a lot of patience, and a lot of tough love, and some more patience to bring out what God has instilled within each one of us. And so we thank teachers for that ministry today. Now, since Easter, we have been looking at some of the post-resurrection accounts. And as I was reading through them, there was one that I came across. I thought, I can really make this fit into the message this morning. Now, when you first hear it, you might think, Jim, how are you going to make that fit? But just stick with me here, okay? And this is out of Matthew chapter 28. It's verses 11 through 15, and this is immediately after the resurrection of Christ. And in Matthew's account of the resurrection, you might remember that the Roman soldiers, that were guarding Jesus' tomb, they fell like dead men when they saw this angel that appeared there at the tomb. And you may know that part of the story, but here's what happens right afterwards. The word says, some of the guard went into the city and told the chief priests everything that had happened. After the priests had assembled then with the elders, they devised a plan to give a large sum of money to the soldiers, telling them, you must say to his disciples, his disciples came by night and stole him away while we were asleep. Now that would be kind of embarrassing to report, but anyway, that's what they were told to report. And then they said, if it comes to the governor's ears, we will satisfy him and keep you out of trouble. So they took the money, and they did as they were directed. Now remember, it was the religious leaders who were trying to get rid of Jesus in the first place. And I want you to think for a second, Does that part of the story sound similar to anything else that the religious leaders did when they were trying to get rid of Jesus? Let's think about that for a second. You might remember Judas, okay? When it came to Judas, Judas, they gave him 30 pieces of silver to betray Jesus so that then they could go and arrest him. Now, 30 pieces of silver was a lot of money. That was a third of a year's wages. So just imagine what that might mean to you. But they gave him all this money, and the pattern that we see here is that the religious leaders thought that they could take care of their problems by throwing money at them. They thought they could fix it that way. Now, don't get me wrong. Money is helpful. The money is needed lots of times. We'll get to that. But I want you to hear this too. We live in a culture that likes to throw money at its problems and at its issues. I'll give you a few examples. I'm not in a good mood today, so I think I'll go shopping. And that will make me feel happy. I can tell some of you like to do that. I can see that on your faces. We throw money at the problem. And now it's not just the ladies, all right? Don't think that. Us guys, we do the same thing. We just buy different stuff. And sometimes it's more expensive than what the ladies buy. But anyway, I'll give you another example. Maybe the kid isn't happy. And so what do? We buy them something to make them happy. Or we bribe good behavior out of them for promising to buy them something. So we're throwing money at the problem. In church, we do this sometimes too. We see a ministry need, and we say, well, that's a good thing. And we'll give money toward it, which that's good, we need that. But if we only give money toward it, then that allows us to not get our hands dirty. That allows us to not go face to face with the problems, with the issues, and with the people to whom we are reaching out to. As I thought about it, I didn't try to read the whole of the Gospels, but I really couldn't think of any time where Jesus said, oh, just throw money at it. Jesus always said, go to the people. Go and work with them face to face. Give you another example. Lobbyists for large corporate interests throw lots of money at lots of people. Lots of different people, lots of different kinds of people, lots of different groups, and they're pretty successful at making their problems go away. Our government, let's face it too, throws a lot of money at a lot of problems. And we hope in this culture that money will make the problem go away. Now, it's true. It can be helpful. I don't have my screen up there. I don't have my screen turned on up there. I can't see what you're seeing, so I have to go off of your cues. I had to use that picture. I couldn't resist doing that. But it's true. We cannot throw money at our problems. It can help, but it doesn't make everything go away. And just as with the religious leaders, okay? It didn't work for them. Jesus didn't just go away, and we're thankful for that. Now, there's no doubt, again, that money's helpful in a lot of situations, and I want to come back to our schools here and talk about that. Our schools, for example, really, they need finances. There's no doubt about that. And I am in favor of school funding. I guess I better say that today since we're thanking teachers and staff and so forth. I better take that kind of a stance. But I could say a lot about what I think about how our state government funds our schools. I will simply say that I think that it's unjust and that our government has allowed it to go on for decades. And actually what we see now, I believe, that we're taking from the poor and giving to the wealthy. And I won't go into all that, but that's what I see happening. I could say a lot, too, about how our culture pays entertainers, pays professional athletes and actors in comparison to how teachers and school staff are paid. Our culture allows for this. And you know why? It's because we value we value entertainment way more than we value education. We'll throw a lot of money at tickets for sporting events. We'll throw money at cable TV packages that give you access to every game you'd ever want to see. We'll readily buy products that are sponsoring sporting events. But as a whole, as a culture, we allow that school funding to be what it is, and we'll pay athletes, well, what we do. And again, now money, it's not a bad thing. Money actually is neither good or evil. You could use it either way. Obviously, we need to use it for good, but money will not make problems go away. Not for governments, not for schools, and, well, not for churches either. Because there are some things that more money simply will not fix. And if you work in the schools, you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm getting at. There is such brokenness in our society. There is such a fall from moral decency and a fall from what is really godly wisdom and godly righteousness, and our schools deal with it every day. And your teachers, your school bus drivers, everybody deals with all that kind of stuff every day. What our society needs more than this just money. What we need is role models who they themselves are an example of godly wisdom and godly righteousness in their choices. And they lead other people to do the same. People, not just kids, but adults too. They need someone to look up to who is a godly example. And especially in those times when people cave in. And there's all kinds of situations where people need to stand up, but unfortunately just cave in to what is easiest. And maybe that's at a sporting event. Maybe that's in social media. Maybe that's in times when we're in conflict. And when we're in conflict, we tend to either get into a big fight or we run away from it and we're in denial of it. We don't deal with it, rather than sitting down and dealing with it in a healthy way. We need good examples of people that deal with these things in a proper way. Young people need to have adults who will hold them accountable for their actions. Kids misbehave. That's just how it is. Kids get out of line. Kids misbehave. They need someone to hold them accountable. They need someone to hold them to a higher standard. And unfortunately, that's where we tend to cave more than any other time. Is that we let the kids get away with it. But if kids aren't held accountable, if they're not held to a higher standard, then guess what? There is no accountability. And there are no standards. There are no expectations. And then you have just an absolute free-for-all. And that, unfortunately, is what we're dealing with in our culture today. There are no standards. There are no expectations. Or at least I should say that they're falling away greatly. Again, what we need are people, men and women, who stand up for what is right in God's eyes and live it out themselves. They're examples for somebody else to look up to. We need people who will reach out and love the unlovely. We need people who will see the potential in somebody else and engage them and love them enough to bring out what is best in them. And our society needs a faith in God and a faith in Jesus Christ that transforms and changes lives. We need people to go out and live that life, who show the character of God to other people. And you don't have to be a teacher. You don't have to work in the schools. And you don't have to be a Sunday school teacher to help out with these things. Anybody can be a role model. In the book of Titus, chapter 2, verse 7, Paul writes these words, and Paul himself was a teacher, but he says, "In everything, set them an example by doing what is good. In your teaching, show integrity, seriousness, and soundness of speech that cannot be condemned, so that those who oppose you may be ashamed because they have nothing bad to say about us." Did you hear that? What he's saying is live in such a way that if somebody wanted to say something negative about you, they would have absolutely no leg to stand on. Live in a way that you cannot be condemned by somebody else. Live in a way that your example is a reflection of the love and character of God. That is what we are called to, and anybody can do that. Again, you don't have to be a teacher. You don't have to work in the schools. You don't have to be a Sunday school teacher. Anybody can be an example. And God is calling you in some way to be that for somebody. But on this day, we do give special thanks to those who work in our schools, teach, those who teach in our Sunday schools, and those in our school system that make everything else happen. You think about the cooks, the custodians, the bus drivers, the secretaries. Golly, don't forget about the secretaries. You've got your administration. You've got your school board members. For all those people, we say thank you for your service, for your patience, for your ability to see in others and maybe what they don't see in themselves. And we thank you for the work that you do for God to bring out what God has put in those kids. Let's bow our heads for a word of prayer.